After my confession to my stepbrother was rejected, I ran away from home. To my surprise, I stumbled upon a 5-year-old boy. He clung to my leg and called me Mom in the sweetest, clearest voice. Left with no choice, I took him home with me. But just as we stepped inside, I overheard my stepbrother's best friend, Spencer, say, "A girl like Stephanie, with motives that aren't pure? You'd be better off staying away from her for a decade or two." The moment those words landed, the little boy at my side lit up. He pointed straight at Spencer. "Mommy, that's Daddy." My hand flew to cover the child's mouth before my brain even registered. Too late. The two men standing in the center of the living room had already caught the sound. Cameron, my stepbrother, was the first to stand. "Stephanie, where have you been?" His expression and tone were filled with concern and worry, not a hint of awkwardness from having turned down my confession days ago. I stayed silent, then accidentally locked eyes with Spencer. His features were sharp and cold. That single eyelid made his already intense gaze downright hostile. Just one look, even from across the room, filled me with inexplicable disgust. Maybe the boy felt it too. He tightened his grip around my thigh. Cameron blinked, then asked, "Where did this kid come from?" Spencer snorted coldly. "A grown woman still pulling the runaway stunt? If you've got the guts to leave, don't come back. And what's with bringing home a kid? You really have too much time on your hands." Spencer and I had never gotten along. From the first time we met, I could tell he had a natural dislike for me. Not only did he constantly talk behind my back to Cameron, he also kept egging him on to stay away from me. Worse, he saw through my feelings for Cameron early on and made sure to mock me with a passive-aggressive smile at every turn. Eventually, I developed a physical aversion to him. Spencer didn't just annoy me, he felt like someone the universe had sent to go against me at every turn. So I met his cold, mocking gaze and said on purpose, "What's it to you? Can you stop clinging to Cameron every day? Is this your house or mine?" His face darkened. Cameron quickly jumped in to ease the tension. "All right, Stephanie. I was the one who asked Spencer to help me look for you. This is all my fault." The air between Spencer and me was electric with hostility. Like war had silently ignited. Suddenly, tiny fingers tightened around mine, and the child's timid voice broke the tension. "Mommy. Hug." Just 3 soft syllables dropped into the silence like a pebble into a still lake. Cameron's eyes widened instantly. "What did he just call you?" I sighed, already getting a headache from this clingy little dumpling. "He's latched onto me. Keeps insisting I'm his mom." Hearing the impatience in my voice, the child's eyes filled with tears. "Mommy, I'm Julian." The 3 of us, Cameron, Spencer, and I, sat in a triangle on different couches. In the middle sat Julian, tearful and chatty, rambling nonstop. It took half an hour before I could get anything coherent out of him. Apparently, Julian had traveled back from 10 years in the future. He said no one wanted him there, so he'd come back to find his parents. And right now, the mother was obvious. It was me. Not just because he clung to me from the start, but because his little face looked at least 70% like mine. Spencer, who had been silent the whole time, now spoke up with the expression of a corpse. "Where's your dad?" I stared at Spencer like he was an idiot. Seriously? He believed this? Putting aside the fact that Julian's backstory was shady, the fact he kept calling me Mommy already made me suspect someone had sent him to stir up trouble. Cameron, though, seemed to really like the clingy little guy. He was feeding Julian low-calorie snacks I had stashed in the fridge, one bite at a time. He asked, "Yeah, where's your dad?" I glanced at Cameron, speechless. Seriously? He believed him too? Julian gnawed on a cheese stick. First, he looked at me. Then he glanced at both men across the room. One cold-faced grim reaper. One gentle man with a warm smile. Then, without hesitation, he pointed at Cameron. You're my daddy." My eyes widened in shock. If I remembered right, when we first entered the house, didn't Julian point at Spencer? Was I mistaken? The next second, Spencer stood up abruptly, voice sharp and cold. "Call the missing persons unit. Turn him over to the police." Julian jolted in fear and scrambled into Cameron's arms like a startled kitten. "Daddy, don't send me away. I want to stay with you and Mommy." In the end, Julian stayed. The police couldn't find any records of him at all. And the way he clung to my leg and cried so miserably. I had no choice but to agree. After I finally got him to sleep, I left the guest room physically and mentally drained. Cameron was waiting right outside the door, smiling gently. "Stephanie, are you okay? Where have you been these past few days? I was really worried about you." I met his gaze with a cold expression and a sharp tongue. "It's none of your business. Who are you to me, anyway?" His smile faltered, but he quickly recovered. "Sorry. Maybe I overstepped. But I really was worried about you, even if it's just as your brother." A fire rose in my chest. What I hated most was Cameron's constant politeness, his way of keeping things gentle, not rejecting but not accepting either. I would rather he had turned me down flat, coldly and clearly. Instead, he always parried with a soft hand. "What kind of brother do you think you are to me?" Cameron sighed and thought for a moment before speaking again. "You and Spencer always fight when you see each other. I asked him to help me look for you. I can tell, he may be harsh with his words, but he really was concerned about where you went." I clenched my jaw. At that moment, I didn't want to hear that name at all. I turned on my heel and went back to my room. When I checked my phone, I saw Spencer had messaged me half an hour ago. "Let's get a paternity test tomorrow." What? There it was again, his signature, I run the world, tone. I didn't hesitate. I blocked him on the spot. Seriously. Who did he think he was, Julian's dad? In my sleep, I found myself dreaming about the first time I met Cameron. It was 2 years ago, when Uncle Brown fell in love with my mother and brought his son, Cameron, who was 3 years older than me, into our home. Living under the same roof, I slowly began to realize my feelings for Cameron had changed. I couldn't quite tell where the line between family and something more had blurred, but before I knew it, he was all I could think about. In the dream, Cameron was still the same gentle, considerate person. The way he treated me made me feel a kind of care and warmth I had never experienced before. Then the scene shifted. Cameron stood in front of me, serious and calm, saying, "Stephanie, I think you're confusing love with familial affection. This isn't right." He rejected me. I watched as the Cameron in my dream walked farther and farther away, until he became a tiny black dot in the distance. And then, out of nowhere, Spencer's eternally cold face appeared. He grabbed me by the throat, voice filled with fury. "Stephanie, you dare like Cameron? Stephanie. Stephanie." I jolted awake with a gasp. The dream devil himself was looming over my bed, staring down at me like he was dissecting me with his eyes. Spencer's hawk-like gaze pierced right through me. I sucked in a breath and cursed silently. "What bad luck. Who told you could come into my bedroom?" He finally looked away, his lips curling into that familiar smirk of his. I wonder who it was, moaning my name in her sleep loud enough for me to hear it through the door. "If I hadn't worried you might die alone in here, do you think I would have walked in?" "Excuse me, what?" I was calling Spencer's name in my sleep? Just perfect. Disgusting on every level. I shot him a glare and got up to wash up without saying another word. Spencer left the room on his own. Sometimes, I really wondered if Cameron and Spencer were secretly gay for each other. What else would explain Cameron giving him the passcode to our house? Spencer acted like he was a semi-permanent resident around here. When I finally went downstairs, I saw Julian and Spencer on the couch, locked in a silent staring contest. The moment Julian saw me, his eyes welled up and he started whining. "Mommy." He dragged me out of bed and scolded me. Feeling a little awkward, I peeled him off and headed toward the dining room for breakfast. Julian followed behind me like a little bobblehead toy, cheeks puffed out in a pout. Spencer checked the time and announced, "We're heading to the hospital in 1 hour." I paused mid-step. Did I say I was going? Spencer crossed his arms and said flatly, "Cameron's out on a business trip. He asked me to take you and Julian to the hospital." I froze. Even the egg I'd been peeling for Julian slipped from my fingers and hit the table. I didn't believe a word of Julian's time-traveling story. But, he really did look too much like me. There was even a strange sense of familiarity I couldn't quite explain. So, against my better judgment, I nodded. Spencer's expression darkened. "You wouldn't go when I asked you. But the second Cameron's name is mentioned, you're suddenly all for it. Do you like him that much?" Spencer and I sat in silence on the way to the hospital. Maybe he had called ahead, because the results came back pretty fast. The answer was both unexpected, and yet somehow made perfect sense. Julian was indeed my biological son. But I was a young woman who had just recently graduated. Where would I even find time to have a 5-year-old child? There was only one possibility. Maybe Julian really was from 10 years in the future. Back in the car, Julian was all smug and self-satisfied as he cuddled into my arms. "Mommy, let's just say I'm your baby, okay?" I sighed in resignation. I was starting to realize I was actually weak to his sweet little antics. "Yeah, you're my Julian." He continued to chatter happily in my arms. I looked up instinctively toward the driver's seat, Spencer. He was gripping the paternity report so hard, his knuckles had turned white. Then, as if he could sense my gaze, he suddenly looked up and met my eyes. I jumped in fright. But Spencer didn't say anything. Instead, he reached over and pinched Julian's chubby cheek with his fingers. His voice was low and forceful, more like an interrogation than a question. "I'm asking one last time. Who is your father?" "Me." I almost laughed out loud. What the hell was wrong with Spencer? I slapped his hand away with a fierce glare and held Julian protectively in my arms. Back off. Don't talk to him like that. Julian must have really been frightened, because he immediately buried his head in my chest. His little arms wrapped tightly around my waist. Spencer and I locked eyes in silence. It was strange. For a split second, I thought I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. No way, right? Just as I was about to blink to get a better look, Spencer turned away and started the car. Back to his usual high and mighty self. Cameron's out of town. Your parents are on vacation. If you can't take care of the kid, you can stay at my place. Ugh. There it was, that insufferable tone, like the world owed him something. I answered coldly, no need. We have our own home. Who asked you, outsider? I lowered my head and started teasing Julian, trying to lighten the mood. I didn't notice the veins bulging from Spencer's grip on the steering wheel. Even after returning home, my chest felt tight and heavy. What was with Spencer? Were we cosmically incompatible or something? Maybe our signs just clashed by nature. Julian, sensing my foul mood, ran over and made a bunch of silly faces to cheer me up. I looked at this tiny version of myself and couldn't help but laugh. After hesitating for a bit, I whispered, Julian, can mommy ask you something about the future? His little face turned red, like he was feeling a bit guilty. Mommy, Julian's kinda dumb. I don't remember that much. I thought for a moment, then carefully asked, do you remember what happened after your daddy and mommy got married? According to Julian, Cameron was his father. Which meant that, in the future, Cameron and I did end up together. But then why had he rejected me now? Did something change his mind later on? I stared at Julian, hoping he would give me something, anything. Julian gave a little giggle, completely innocent. You always fed daddy, mommy. He ate a lot. You'd always beg him to stop, saying, no more, it's too much. Feed? Feed what? Wait, was Cameron paralyzed in the future or something? I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. The smile froze on my face. I forgot how to breathe. What did you say? Julian explained patiently. Auntie Mary said keeping someone locked up is like raising a baby chick. Daddy was the chick. Mommy was feeding him. Was I in a dream, or had I accidentally tuned into some adult channel? Auntie Mary? Don't tell me that's my Mary, the friend who talks absolute nonsense all the time? My lips twitched. I felt like I aged 10 years in an instant. I muttered to myself, so Cameron and I really end up in a twisted love-hate mess? Julian's ears were sharp and immediately caught the key phrase. He blinked and asked innocently, love-hate? I know what love means, what does hate mean? Before I could answer, he started chattering again, oh, right. One time I heard Daddy say, touch me, come on. Mommy, how did you touch Daddy? Touch, where? Touch how? Everything about this felt highly inappropriate, but I had no evidence to prove it. Julian's face was the picture of innocent curiosity. And me? I was completely speechless. In the end, all I could do was sigh. It's fine. One step at a time. At least this proved one thing. My future with Cameron was apparently very satisfying. I thought Cameron's business trip meant I could finally go a while without seeing that grim-faced storm cloud named Spencer. But who knew, this man had absolutely no shame. Not only did he show up at our door every single day, he stayed for the entire day. And sure, I couldn't stand Spencer, that was nothing new. But I didn't expect Julian to start fearing him too. 3 days in a row, Spencer came over. I couldn't take it anymore. Don't come tomorrow, I snapped. Can't you see Julian doesn't like you? But instead of getting mad, Spencer actually laughed. He crouched down and pinched Julian's cheek, his tone unreadable as he stared at him. I'd like to know that too. What exactly did the me from 10 years later do to traumatize you so badly? Julian turned around and looked at me with pleading eyes. His face practically screamed help me. But Spencer didn't relent. He scooped Julian up in one arm and, out of nowhere, pulled out a box of kids' milk and offered it to him like a bribe. Be good. Tell me, what are your mom and dad like 10 years from now? Under pressure, Julian took a few miserable sips. He stammered, they live in a little wooden box, they won't talk to Julian anymore. My heart jumped, and I stared anxiously at Julian, afraid he might suddenly blurt out something outrageous. So before Spencer could ask anything else, I snatched Julian away from him. That's enough. Leave. And don't come back tomorrow. Spencer looked at the empty space in his arms. Then, he laughed. It was unsettling. I had no idea what he was laughing at. But my heart began to pound with unease. Spencer didn't say another word. He turned and left. And I finally let out a sigh of relief. But that night, when I drifted into sleep, all I could see was Spencer's fierce expression in my dreams. He looked at me and demanded, why? Yeah, why? Why was he always so hostile toward me? From the very first time we met, he had treated me with thinly veiled sarcasm and disdain. Later, just seeing me stand next to Cameron was enough to make his face sour. Thankfully, my nightmare was interrupted by a phone call. I was drenched in cold sweat and didn't even check the caller ID before answering. Spencer's voice came through, trembling slightly, like he was struggling to hold something back. "Stephanie, did you know? Julian is our child." Bullshit. The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. But Spencer simply took a deep breath, calming his tone. "Yesterday, when Julian drank that milk, I took the straw. It had his saliva. I had it tested. I can send you the report." My brain buzzed. So, all those visits Spencer made over the past few days weren't just to annoy me? He was trying to get Julian's DNA? But where the hell did he get the idea that Julian could be his son in the first place? Before I could think too much about it, his voice came again, cool and composed. "Stephanie. Let's talk." I let out a cold laugh. "There's nothing to talk about between us." Then I hung up without hesitation. What a joke. Trying to claim my son with just a damn straw? I forgot, Spencer was the kind of man who never gave up until he got what he wanted. Sure enough, the phone rang again. It felt like a death knell. I turned off my phone. At last, peace. But it lasted less than 10 minutes. The front door beeped as someone entered the passcode. Spencer walked in like he owned the place, straight up to me. Before saying a word, he gave Julian a glance. Then, he handed me a sheet of paper. Black and white. "Read it." The hospital name was listed at the top. It was the most reputable one in the city. I had checked the trash can that morning too. Julian's milk box was gone. Which meant this paternity test was, probably real. Even though I'd already had a faint suspicion, seeing the official result declaring a biological parent-child match still left me dazed. Julian was our child? My future husband, was Spencer? I looked up at the sharp-edged man standing in front of me. A wave of cold emptiness swept over me. Was I blind in the future? Or heartless? Or did all the decent men in the world die off, leaving only this disaster of a man? Spencer didn't push for an answer. He casually took a seat beside Julian. The sandwich in Julian's hands trembled. The boiled egg fell to the floor with a thud. Spencer's voice followed, laced with sarcasm. "Come on, Julian. Tell your real dad, why'd you recognize the wrong man?" I jumped to my feet. What the hell did he mean, recognize the wrong man? Cameron, for all his flaws, was still 100 times better than Spencer. I slammed my hand on the table and barked, trying to cover up my nervousness. "Watch your mouth." The smug look on Spencer's face vanished. He narrowed his eyes at me. "He rejected you, and you're still defending him." Like pouring salt on a wound. It was bad enough that I'd been rejected after confessing. Now this jerk had to rub it in again and again. It was like he enjoyed reminding me of it. I shot back deliberately. "So what? Even if Cameron doesn't like me, he still cares about me. That doesn't stop me from liking him." Spencer's lips curled into a smirk, but his eyes stayed cold. His voice was steady, each word falling with the weight of a gavel. "Really? If he cared about you, why didn't he say anything when I repeatedly spoke badly about you? He basked in your affection while hiding behind the label of siblings. That's not kindness, it's selfish cowardice. You ran away from home, and when he found you, his first move was to go on a business trip. He sent me, the person you hate the most, to deal with you. Is that the love you're chasing?" I always knew Spencer had a sharp tongue. But this was the first time I'd heard him go on such a long monologue. And it was all aimed at proving Cameron wasn't good enough for me? I was too stunned to even think straight. Only later did I realize. Why did it matter to him who I liked? Thankfully, Spencer's phone rang, interrupting the rising tension. It was Cameron. Spencer gave the screen a dark glance. Then, for some reason, a faint, eerie smile touched his lips. Cameron doesn't know who Julian's real father is yet. How convenient. Do you think I should tell him? Cameron was still sitting comfortably in my block list. If he was calling Spencer, it was probably to check on me and Julian. But judging from the current situation, Spencer clearly believed Julian was his son now. Was he trying to take him away? After all, stumbling into a biological child was a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. The thought of my son, who looked 70% like me, calling Spencer Daddy, made my blood boil. I let out a dry laugh, too angry to think straight. "And what about you? You think you're some kind of saint? You've been lurking around us like a venomous snake. What, that makes you the good guy?" "Yes, I like Cameron. So what if he's weak? He's still 100 times better than you, some brute who takes what he wants." The smirk vanished from Spencer's face. His expression turned pale and cold, like a ghost rising from the grave. He said nothing, but his finger slowly moved toward the answer button on his phone. I lunged at him without thinking. I didn't get the phone, but I did end up tackling him. Spencer fell back onto the couch, pinned beneath me, his expression unreadable. My entire focus was on the phone. I didn't even realize the awkward position we'd landed in. Only after I hung up the call did it hit me, this posture was far too compromising. Spencer's usually ghost-white face was flushed red with anger, or something else. Then a small, innocent voice piped up beside us, "Mommy, are you trying to do Daddy again?" Me? Do what? I scrambled off Spencer like I'd touched a hot stove. Strangely enough, the man who usually never missed a chance to mock me, was now eerily quiet. Turns out, even the sharpest tongue was no match for a child's unfiltered words. Once I'd calmed down, I said as neutrally as possible, "Don't tell Cameron." "Not yet." Spencer frowned. "Why?" Still holding on to hope. I didn't respond. Honestly, my head was a mess. Things had been so simple before, me, Cameron, Spencer. Even after being rejected, I had already decided to move on and just be Cameron's sister. But Julian's arrival had thrown everything into chaos. As if to say, no matter how hard I tried to walk toward Cameron, fate would drag me back toward Spencer. My instinct to keep this from Cameron was just my way of fighting against a future I didn't want. I wasn't ready to accept a script someone else had written for me. Seeing I wasn't answering, Spencer exhaled sharply. Then he gave a cold snort. "Fine. But on one condition." "What is it?" Spencer picked up Julian with one arm and kissed his chubby cheek, an exact copy of mine. I shivered. "Let me bond with my son." I agreed. Because I had no other choice. If letting this rabid dog chew on a bone kept him from biting again, I could live with it. Spencer moved into the guest room, which just so happened to be next to mine. True to his word, he actually started acting like a real dad. Making breakfast, dressing Julian, reading bedtime stories, humming lullabies, day by day, Julian really started warming up to him. I began to wonder, had Spencer actually raised a kid before? But one day, as I walked past him, I caught a glimpse of his browser history. It was pages and pages of search results, how to be a good first-time dad. How to bond with a child who hates you. What to do if your kid loves your ex. Me. So much for natural instinct. The mighty, all-powerful Spencer was secretly Googling parenting tips with his butt in the air at 2 a.m. delightful. Serves him right. Even villains get tamed by toddlers. Whenever Julian wanted to sleep with me, Spencer would pull up a chair beside the bed, holding a massive storybook titled The Ultimate Bedtime Collection. To be fair, his voice was incredibly pleasant. Usually cold and deep, it turned warm and magnetic when reading aloud. His tone slowed down at the end of sentences, soft and slightly raspy, like a feather brushing lightly against the skin. I lay there beside Julian, listening to silly fairy tales. Spencer sat beneath the warm lamplight, reading intently. Honestly, this side of Spencer wasn't all that unlikable. Maybe the story was too mesmerizing, or maybe I was just tired, but I drifted a little. When I snapped back to attention, Spencer had already closed the book. He was staring straight at me. As if to say, "What are you looking at?" Me. So awkward. He looked away nonchalantly and turned to Julian. "All right. That's the end of tonight's story." Julian pouted. "Daddy's not sleeping with us." Me. "Wait, what?" Before I could speak, Spencer asked back, "Do you want me to sleep with you?" Julian nodded instinctively. Then quickly shook his head. "Maybe not. I don't want to get pushed to the end of the bed." Me. The next second, Julian seemed to fall into some memory and started talking to himself. "One night I was sleeping with Mommy, but Daddy rolled over and squished me to the edge. Then he asked Mommy, 'Don't I smell good?'" Me. "That's explicit." "Explicit, I say." I instinctively clamped my hand over Julian's mouth. Spencer gave me a glance, calm and indifferent, and continued the interrogation. "And then?" Julian wriggled free, giggling. "Then Daddy said I smelled sweet." Mommy said no more, but I was too sleepy and curled up at the foot of the bed. "Luckily you gave me a blanket or I'd have gotten sick." Me. Children and their unfiltered mouths. My entire body felt like it was on fire. But when I looked at Julian's innocent, clueless face, I suddenly couldn't say anything. Send help. I was practically suffocating in embarrassment. Then Spencer's voice came, low and teasing, "Oh, it's fine. Daddy and Mommy were just too hot. We didn't need a blanket." Julian, ever curious, asked, "What were you doing? Why were you hot?" I couldn't take it anymore. I threw a pillow at Spencer's face. "Get out." Spencer shrugged, like this was nothing new, and slowly walked toward the door. But just before closing it, he called back, "We were doing grown-up things." After some time, Cameron called via video chat. I still didn't want to talk to him. So I just sat nearby and listened to Julian chat with him. "Don't worry, Daddy Brown. I've been eating a lot lately." Cameron chuckled and, as if just remembering something, asked, "Where's Stephanie?" Spencer, his face as expressionless as ever, gave a slight tilt of his chin to indicate I was sitting beside him. I braced myself and leaned into the screen. On that tiny video frame, the three of us, me, Spencer, and Julian, had our heads perfectly lined up. Cameron blinked, then joked, "You three actually look kind of harmonious, like a family of three." In the next second, Spencer and I instinctively turned to glance at each other. And just like that, we both caught the same weird, awkward look in each other's eyes. Spencer was the first to escape, mumbling a lame excuse, "All right, it's getting late. Julian needs to go to bed." After the call ended, the room fell silent. That strange, conspiratorial sense of unspoken connection between us brought an unfamiliar kind of closeness, one that came with tension. Clearly, neither of us knew how to deal with it. Julian looked at me on his left, then at Spencer on his right. "Aren't we going to bed?" "Yeah, bedtime." Maybe it's true what they say, raising a kid makes time fly. Day by day, I began to feel that something between Spencer and me had changed. I couldn't say exactly what it was. Before, I simply hated him. Now, there was something else. Something harder to define. It wasn't until he naturally started folding my clothes, grabbing towels for me, tucking in my blankets, that I suddenly realized. Wait a minute. Why does this feel like we're a married couple? It hit me that Spencer had already been living in my house for over 3 months now. Something really was changing. The answer was right there, almost within reach, but it was covered by a thick fog. I didn't dare reach through it. And it didn't seem willing to lift on its own. So, I started avoiding Spencer. But living under the same roof, avoiding someone wasn't exactly practical. I said as little as possible and used Julian as a human shield whenever I could. Spencer seemed to notice. I pretended not to. But today, apparently, that wasn't going to work. From the moment Julian was sent upstairs to the study, my heart had been beating all out of rhythm. The third time I tried to get up and read with Julian, Spencer emerged from the kitchen, having just finished washing the dishes. He gave me a sidelong glance and said quietly, "Wait. I need to talk to you." Spencer blocked my path to the stairs. Straight to the point, "Do you still like Cameron?" I froze. "Why do you care?" Spencer pulled out his phone and opened his chat history with Cameron. The messages dated all the way back to the day Cameron left. The latest one was from just moments ago. Each message showed just how concerned Cameron was about me and Julian. Spencer suddenly chuckled. "Do you know how it feels, replying to your best friend while taking care of his wife?" I blinked. "What?" Spencer answered himself. "It feels deliciously immoral. Like taking care of your bro's girl behind his back. Very thrilling. Are you insane?" He wasn't offended. He just smiled again. "Too bad though, Julian is my son." I didn't like his tone. It made me feel like I owed him something. I snapped, "Just say what you want already." Spencer's smile faded. He looked at me directly. "I want to know how you feel about me." "What? Feel about him?" I didn't even hesitate. "I hate you. I thought you knew that." He smirked. "Yeah, well, I hate you too. So? Haven't you ever wondered how two people who hate each other ended up having a child together?" Now that he said it, yeah, I had wondered. But Spencer didn't give me time to answer before launching into a full interrogation. "Stephanie, you keep saying you hate me. So why does your future self have a child with me? If I'm really as awful as you say, then what happened? Was future you blind? Or stupid? What had to happen between us for Julian to exist? Did I force you? Or, is it possible, you don't hate me as much as you claim?" Spencer had always been sharp with words. I had no comeback. The best I could manage was a weak retort, "Maybe it's because you're just that shameless." Spencer burst out laughing. "So what? If I have no shame, but you have a pretty face, we balance each other out." I fell silent. My ears felt a little warm. Maybe it was the turtle soup I had at dinner. I found myself thinking, was my hatred for Spencer really that solid? What kind of dramatic twist had to occur for me to end up with him? Before I could figure it out, Spencer spoke again. "Oh, and according to Julian, our married life is pretty harmonious. So tell me, who do you really think you'll end up with?" Get out. That night, I dumped Julian in Spencer's room. And I tossed and turned, completely unable to sleep. Do I hate Spencer? Of course I do. Then why the hell did I have a kid with him? Those two questions haunted me for 5 straight hours. By the time I checked the clock, it was almost dawn. I let out a heavy sigh, mentally cursed Spencer 1,000 times, and finally closed my eyes. Not even a minute later, I heard the door creak open. Had to be Julian. That clingy little boy, but then I felt it, someone getting closer. The scent was familiar. And I realized it. It was Spencer. That bastard. I didn't move. Just lay there, eyes shut, waiting to see what he was up to. He carefully pulled the blanket over me and tucked it in. I swear, I even heard him tisk softly. What a jerk. Who knows how many times he's "hud" at me while I'm asleep. I was just about to open my eyes dramatically and scare the life out of him. But the next second, warm breath brushed across my lips. I froze. Totally stunned. Spencer, kissed me? I forgot how to breathe. All I could do was pray someone, anyone, would interrupt this nonsense. The good news? Someone did. The bad news? It was Cameron, finally back after 3 months of business travel. Spencer, what the F*** do you think you're doing? I opened my eyes in shock. And met Spencer's teasing gaze. Not pretending to sleep anymore. Me. The next second, Spencer performed a real-life vanishing act. Oh wait, he was dragged off by Cameron and punched. Punched? I sprang out of bed, twisting around like lightning. But it was too late, Spencer had already taken a hit. It was the first time I'd ever seen Cameron so furious in front of me, practically grinding his teeth in rage. His eyes were blazing. You went on and on about how Stephanie had ulterior motives, how she wasn't sincere, and all the while, you were scheming to get me out of the way for 3 months so you could sneak in? Spencer, how did I never realize what a conniving little snake you are? Me? Spencer took the punch without even flinching, then laughed. I'd hoped at least one of them would stay calm. Clearly, I was too optimistic. Bam! Spencer landed a punch of his own, slamming Cameron into the wall. His voice was sharp, furious, and you have the nerve to lecture me? You act all nice to Stephanie, then reject her feelings? How did I not see it before? You're just a manipulative coward, stringing her along. Me? I was just about to intervene. But then I spotted Julian peeking in from the hallway, tiny body tucked behind the doorframe like he was watching a movie. Me? This kid. I couldn't take it anymore. Marching forward, I cut in between them. All right, Mr. Snake. Mr. Hypocrite. That's enough. My son needs his beauty sleep. With that, I scooped Julian into my arms and soothed him gently. Then I shoved both bruised idiots out the door, slammed it shut, and locked it in one smooth move. Back in bed, snuggled up with Julian. Just as I was drifting off, his small voice suddenly piped up, Mommy, they always used to fight too. They'd call each other, the mistress. Me? I barely slept a wink that night. My mind kept replaying Julian's final bedtime sentence. What the hell did that mean? Was future me that wild? Did I play 1v2? The next morning, I came downstairs and saw the 2 men already sitting in the dining room, wounds patched up, about to eat breakfast. Me? Cameron spoke first. Let's take Julian to the hospital for a full checkup later. Spencer curled his lip into a mocking smile. My dear best friend doesn't believe Julian's my son. God, he was so annoying. But I couldn't beat him up, so I just shot Cameron a glance. He is his son. Cameron's face darkened immediately. A beat of silence passed. Then he gave a short laugh, half bitter, half mocking. You know what's funny? Ever since I found out I had a stepsister, Spencer kept warning me to stay away from you. He even sent me popular WeChat articles about how taboo romances end in tragedy. I glanced at Spencer and nodded. Sounds exactly like something he'd do. Spencer shot back, before your birthday party, I really was just trying to look out for you. Cameron clenched his fist, jaw tight. And after the party? Wasn't that the first time you met Stephanie? Spencer went silent. Cameron's voice sharpened, thick with sarcasm. You told me not to fall for her while doing all sorts of sleazy things yourself. Never thought you had it in you, Spencer. Spencer let out a cold laugh, just about to retort. When a cheerful little voice echoed from upstairs. Daddy Brown. You're back. Spencer shot him a glare and asked flatly, who did you just call? Julian paused for a second, then corrected himself. Uncle Brown, you're back. Nice. What a little double-crosser. Cameron beamed and beckoned him over. He crouched down and asked gently, Julian, if Uncle Brown wants to be your daddy now, would that be okay? Julian blinked and pointed to Spencer, whose face had darkened several shades. He seemed a little torn. But, I already have a daddy. Spencer snapped, Cameron, do you even hear yourself? Aren't you supposed to be all about morality and integrity? I was starting to lose it. Their bickering made my head pound. Just as I was about to sneak away, Julian latched onto my leg. Auntie Mary said, only the person who's nicest to Mommy can be daddy. Mommy, you tell me who my daddy is, and that's who I'll be Julian for. Me? I instinctively looked up at the 2 men locked in this hellish tug-of-war. One, cold-faced tyrant. The other, warm and smiling gentleman. I'm not picking. Cameron took a step forward. Stephanie, it's true I rejected you. But now that I know Julian might be our child, I've thought a lot. If we're meant to be together, I'm willing to try, to grow feelings beyond being just family. Spencer ground his teeth. Get lost. I'm not interested. Thankfully, Julian's rumbling tummy brought this hellscape to an abrupt halt. The 2 grown men crowded into the kitchen. I sat on the couch with Julian, watching cartoons. I wasn't sure what had finally made Cameron come to terms with everything. But oddly enough, hearing what he said didn't stir me the way I thought it would. I sighed as the voice from the kitchen called out, "Breakfast's ready." Cameron placed a heart-shaped sunny-side-up egg on my plate and smiled gently. "You used to love the soft-boiled eggs I made." Spencer narrowed his eyes at it. Then promptly took his fully cooked egg, speared it with his fork, and plopped it right on top of mine, burying the heart. "Eat this one. Half-cooked eggs have bacteria." "Me, you're insane." Julian looked left, then right. Then, mimicking Spencer's serious face, he carefully placed his own bunny-shaped egg on my plate. "Here, Mommy. Eat mine. Mine doesn't have bacteria." Cameron chuckled and ruffled Julian's hair. "You're such a good boy, Julian." Spencer immediately chimed in, tone light but clearly showing off. "He is a good boy. Last night, he wouldn't sleep unless I held him. Right, kiddo?" Julian nodded, wide-eyed and innocent. I stared at Spencer's smug face. He looked so damn proud, like, "See, my son loves me more." I was just about to kick him under the table to wipe that look off his face. But instead of dodging, Spencer smoothly reached down and grabbed my ankle under the table. Then he gently stroked it. I froze on the spot. "What the hell is wrong with you?" To protect Julian's fragile little mind from further damage, I restricted both grown men to the first floor. Meanwhile, I took Julian upstairs to play. While he was busy building with his blocks, I sat there deep in thought. From the way Spencer talked earlier, had we actually met before? But I had absolutely no memory of it. Julian kept playing, then muttered to himself, "I still like this daddy better." I quickly realized, he meant Spencer now was better than Spencer 10 years later. I smiled and asked, "Oh? Was your daddy not nice before?" Julian nodded seriously, his little face scrunching into a frown. "Daddy used to always make Mommy mad. So Mommy would take me to Uncle Brown's house and say she never wanted to talk to that stinky daddy again." For a moment, the air went dead still. Wait, what? So it wasn't the 1v2 scenario I was worried about? Jesus, I thought I had sunk to irredeemable moral depths. Thank God that wasn't the case. I asked cautiously, "And then? Did Mommy and Daddy fight a lot?" Julian propped his chin on his hand, thought for a while, then nodded, and shook his head. "Daddy used to think I was Uncle Brown and Mommy's child, but Mommy wouldn't let me tell him the truth. That's why Daddy was always upset. And he got even more upset when he saw me. So I was scared. That's why I like the daddy now better." "Me?" Julian let out a very adult-sounding sigh and frowned. "Even though Daddy locked you up first, and then years later you locked him up too, in the end, you guys still really loved each other." "What? Double imprisonment? Mutual torment? Misunderstandings? Refusing to communicate? So my future with Spencer is that melodramatic? What kind of emotionally chaotic hellscape is future me living in?" I was completely lost, but pressed on. "Do you remember how your Mommy and Daddy met?" Julian scratched his head, then answered in his soft little voice, "I heard Daddy say that Mommy took advantage of him and didn't take responsibility. That's why he was always mad at her. But I think, he was just jealous." "Me? Great." I was now sure I had lost a chunk of memory. But when exactly? Where? Who was involved? What even happened? I couldn't recall a single detail. Feeling frustrated, I went downstairs to get some juice for Julian. Only to see the two grown men in the garden through the window, locked in a very chilly silence. Cameron lit a rare cigarette and spoke first. "Spencer, enough is enough." Spencer leaned lazily against the railing, eyes fixed on the tulips in the garden. "Can't hear you." "You know exactly what I mean," Cameron said. "Your feelings for Stephanie, they're not just about Julian. And they're not just pure dislike either." Spencer turned his head, eyes sharp as blades. "Oh? And what about you? You rejected her, then act like some devoted protector. Who exactly are you trying to impress?" Cameron inhaled deeply, his voice still calm but frosty. "Our situation is more complicated than you think." Spencer sneered. "Complicated? You mean you want to keep enjoying her affection without breaking that fake sibling barrier? Too scared to face the consequences? Cameron, you're a coward. It's pathetic." Cameron crushed out the cigarette. His tone dropped even lower. "And you? Manipulating your way close to her, even using a child, real noble of you." Spencer shrugged and gave a wicked grin. "Not noble. Just effective. At least I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to fight for it. You? You're just waiting for her to turn around and come back, or waiting for me to win." Me? Listening to this entire soap opera as the subject of their tug-of-war? I had only one thought: enough. Seriously, enough. It wasn't until after dinner that my mood finally settled a bit. Spencer had taken Julian for a walk to help him digest. And Cameron stepped into my bedroom. "Stephanie, can we talk?" he asked gently, though I sensed a hint of urgency beneath the softness. I nodded and followed him out to the quiet balcony. About Julian and Spencer, he said, looking into the distance. I'm sorry. His voice was still as warm as ever. I was indecisive before. I didn't understand my own heart. But now I do. I don't want to just be your brother. The evening breeze swept past us, bringing a light chill. I looked at Cameron and felt unexpectedly calm. Cameron, I began softly, using a name I hadn't spoken in a long time. There's something I need to say clearly. He looked at me, a tangle of emotions in his eyes. I took a deep breath and looked straight at him. The moment you rejected me, or maybe the moment I ran away, I decided to put away all those feelings I wasn't supposed to have for you. I paused. Oddly, I felt much lighter. Saying these words was easier than I expected. Cameron's face paled slightly. Stephanie, I know I cut him off. This isn't about bitterness. I just, finally woke up. Like you said, what we had might have been family affection. Or habit. But it wasn't love. I didn't understand that before. I clung to the idea that it was love. But now I know better. So you don't need to feel guilty. And you definitely don't need to force yourself to develop feelings for me because of Julian. It's not forced, he said quickly. What about Spencer? I interrupted. That shut him up. He was completely stunned. So tell me, do you really have romantic feelings for me? Or, I looked him in the eye and finished the sentence, clearly and deliberately, are you just unwilling to lose? Unwilling to lose what? Unwilling to see something you thought was yours, something that's always been by your side, suddenly in danger of being taken away by someone else. I paused. Then forced myself to say something even I thought was cruel, especially when that someone is your best friend. Cameron's pupils shrank. I watched as his lips moved, yet no sound came out. I smiled faintly. See? You hesitated. Cameron, you've always been good to me. You still are. But that kind of kindness is a brother's kindness toward a sister. You rejected me because of morality, out of a sense of duty. And now, you're coming close again, probably for the same reasons, just mixed with a little possessiveness. But that's not love. I took a deep breath and said steadily, the moment you turned me down, or rather, the moment I ran away from home, I already decided to put those feelings away. Completely. We returned to the safest, and most impossible, place, siblings. So let's leave it that way. You be my brother. I'll be your sister. For Julian, for Mom and Uncle Brown, that's the best ending for all of us. Cameron stayed quiet for a long time. The wind ruffled his hair, and I saw the light in his eyes dim. At last, he pulled out a difficult, bittersweet smile. I understand. If that's your final decision, then I respect it. He turned and walked away from the balcony. His back looked just a little lonely. I leaned against the railing. It felt like a heavy stone that had been pressing on my chest was finally lifted. The emptiness it left behind felt like relief. Well, that was a beautiful speech. Spencer's voice suddenly came from behind me. I jumped. I turned and saw him leaning lazily against the balcony doorway, holding a glass of water and watching me with a complicated expression. Eavesdropping, huh? Classy, I snapped. Balcony's a shared space, he said as he walked over and handed me the glass. I took it reflexively and took a sip. Then he looked at me and asked, out of nowhere, what you said about being over Cameron, was that true? Why do you care? Of course I care. He stepped closer, eyes burning into mine. If you've really cleared your heart of him, doesn't that mean I've got a shot? My heart gave an involuntary jolt. That damn kiss came to mind again. But I kept a straight face. What gives you the right to ask for a shot? Besides suddenly having a kid together, we've got a whole mess between us. So? Does that stop us from dating? I let out a short, angry laugh and recalled some of those sappy lines I'd seen online. Then I said to him, sorry, I can't date you. But you matter a lot to Julian. I don't want our romantic status, whatever it is, to interfere with your bond. That would make me sad too. So, let's just be really good friends, okay? Spencer froze for a full minute as the words sank in. Then he laughed, half furious, half amused. You mean good friends who happen to have a son? Me? You said we've got a mess to sort out, fine. Let's settle it, piece by piece. He stepped closer, gaze intense, unyielding. Let's start from the beginning. Stephanie, think carefully, when exactly did we first meet? Truthfully, I couldn't remember. So I turned the question around. Why are you asking me? You say it like you remember crystal clear. Spencer gave a cold snort. Don't try to bait me. I know you've forgotten me. Me, so? He stared into my eyes, voice low and firm, carrying a weight that didn't allow doubt. Stephanie, you were the one who started it. Me, you want to elaborate on that? Because honestly, I really wanted to know. I was dying of curiosity. Spencer saw I genuinely couldn't recall, and sighed, then started recounting slowly. 3 years ago. In M Country. The Red Bar. You ordered a tomorrow cocktail. Then you started mixing beer, whiskey, vodka, like you were drinking soda. Coincidentally, that bar was owned by a friend of mine, and he asked me to help out that night. That's how I ran into you, a drunk girl with no one to pick her up. Me, and then? Spencer's face looked a bit awkward now. Then? I took you to the third-floor lounge. You slept there for the night. I didn't believe him. No way it was that innocent. Fueled by instinct and righteous fury, I slapped him, hand moving faster than my brain. Spencer. What the hell did you do to me? No way a petty, grudge-holding jerk like him would be this bitter for years if nothing happened. Spencer, even though I fell for you first, when we got into the room, you were the one who pulled down my pants and insisted on tipping me to sleep with you. Me? I thought back. Okay. I might have a tiny flicker of memory. But I didn't wake up feeling any soreness or, well, evidence of debauchery. Wait, did I sleep with Spencer? No wonder. No wonder everything felt so damn messy. Oh my God. Spencer had no idea what was going through my head and continued. The next morning, I went out to get you breakfast. When I came back, you were gone. I searched for you everywhere. No one at the university had seen you. They said you'd returned home. His tone suddenly turned cold. He sneered. When we met again, you were already head over heels for Cameron. And you said, I'm not responsible for anything I said between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Me, oh. That explains it. No wonder you always look like you want to kill me. Spencer frowned. I asked a doctor about it later. They said it was probably alcohol-induced memory loss. But we'll need to see a specialist to confirm. Me, wow. Thanks. And then, something he said earlier finally registered. I blinked. Wait, did you say, you had a crush on me? Spencer's face froze for a second. Yeah. We met a few times. You probably don't remember me at all. Me, oh. My mind exploded with a loud buzz, like something deep inside had suddenly shattered. Then, as if a switch had flipped, all of Julian's scattered phrases about the future snapped into place, forming one terrifying, clear timeline. So that's how early it all began, between Spencer and me, 10 years later. He was the one who fell first. I was the one who ghosted him. He chased and got nothing. Desire turned to resentment. So when Spencer saw me again, at Cameron's birthday party, when he realized I had not only forgotten him, but also fallen for his best friend, that sense of betrayal, twice over, was enough to trigger something darker. That's when Spencer locked me up. And me? I probably fell in love with him again in that twisted entanglement. Maybe I even got pregnant. But he didn't know. Maybe because I fought back. Maybe because Cameron stepped in. Eventually, Spencer let me go. Then, when he found me again, holding Julian's hand, he assumed the child was Cameron's. Heartbroken, he walked away, blessing our happy union. And me, being me, how could I possibly accept that kind of sacrifice? I thought he'd stop loving me. So I turned around, and locked him up instead. Which perfectly matches what Julian said, mutual imprisonment. The truth was out. From the very beginning, we were a mess of tangled debts and damage. As I mentally walked through everything that had happened between Spencer and me 10 years in the future, I had to admit, this was one gloriously melodramatic loop of possessive, forced love. I looked at the complicated man in front of me, my chest tightening. Between us, it had long been impossible to tell who hurt who first, or who owed what. We fell into a strange silence. I looked at Spencer. The man I had always believed to be incompatible with me in every way. And yet, at that moment, he suddenly looked incredibly clear. Even a little pitiful. All his sharpness, had it come from a half-formed memory and years of unanswered longing? Haha, sorry about that. Spencer froze, like he hadn't expected me to apologize. He awkwardly turned away. Who wants your apology anyway? Then what do you want? I asked instinctively. He whipped his head back around, eyes blazing. You still don't know what I want. My heart skipped wildly. At some point, Julian had appeared at the top of the stairs, hugging his tiny pillow. He blinked sleepily. Daddy? Mommy? Are you guys fighting again? Can you hurry up this time? Julian wants to sleep. I quickly looked away from Spencer's gaze and scooped up our son. Let's get you to bed, sweetheart. After tucking Julian in for the night, I came out of the room and saw Spencer packing up his things. Right. Cameron was back. Of course he couldn't keep staying here. I offered to walk him out. He didn't refuse. We strolled down the garden path. Spencer kept his head down, lost in thought. The breeze was soft. The air just the right temperature. What a beautiful night. I really want to kill you. He said it so calmly, so abruptly, I nearly tripped. As if he were casually commenting on the weather. "Geez, man, please don't kill me," I muttered. Spencer suddenly laughed. Maybe I'd made him laugh. Kidding. But deep down, I had a feeling I knew what he meant. He wanted an answer. I could admit now, I didn't hate him anymore. But love? That felt premature. Even with a child between us, I still believed things could take time. But Spencer didn't seem like someone who could wait. At that moment, I understood why the future Spencer would lock me up. Every imprisonment is really just a desperate grasp for connection. Come to think of it, I've always had a sharp tongue. No wonder Spencer kind of hated me. All that spite he directed at me, it probably came from pain, frustration, and feeling forgotten. Realizing that, I softened and said gently, "Just, give me a little more time." No deadline. No promises. It was like I handed him a blank exam paper, and waited to see what kind of score he'd earn. But before I could finish the thought, Spencer suddenly said, "I'm not that lovesick fool anymore." Huh? He gave me a strangely aggrieved look. Being a simp gets you nowhere. I'm focusing on myself now. Got it? I've evolved. I gave him a thumbs up. Alright then, evolved king. But then he added, "But don't keep me waiting too long, either." I groaned, dropping the thumb. Ugh, I knew the praise wouldn't last. "You're insane," he muttered. I smirked but said nothing, continuing down the path with him. As we walked, memories of our endless bickering came flooding back. "Spencer," I said, "I really hate you." He didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, I hate you too. So what does that make us? A pair of dumbass hate lovers." What about Julian? Poor unlucky kid. When I got back, Julian was sound asleep. I slipped quietly under the covers, holding his soft little body in my arms. Thinking about Spencer. Holding Julian. And somewhere along the way, I drifted off too. I had a dream. In it, Spencer and I were constantly at odds, loving, fighting, doubting, hurting. Julian stumbled along in our chaos. Me, stubborn. Spencer, obsessive. We were like fire and fuse, always one spark away from disaster. We hurt each other. And Julian got caught in the blast. In that dream, Spencer died in a plane crash at 30. I couldn't take it. I made all the arrangements, and followed him in death. Our ashes were placed together in one little wooden box. Mostly me. Only fragments of him. At the very end of the dream, Julian stood there clutching our wedding photo. On the back, I had written, "Stupid Spencer. You always pissed me off. But in the next life, I'll still find you." And Julian cried. Screamed and cried. He probably didn't fully understand death. But the grief crushed him. His lips moved. He was saying something. In the dream, I struggled to get closer, to hear him. Until I finally caught his hoarse, broken voice repeating the same words, "Stupid wooden box, you love dirt more than people. Stupid wooden box, you love dirt more than people. Stupid wooden box, you love dirt more than people." I shot awake, drenched in cold sweat. My face was wet. I reached up instinctively. Tears. Before I could even recover. 2 round black eyes stared back at me. Julian blinked. Then wiggled in closer and wiped my tears with his chubby little hands. "Morning, Mommy. Thank God. It was just a dream."